Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So I've got an iron review for you today, and it's from Tour Edge. We've got 3 brand new models in the exotics range that we're going to take a look at in this particular video. I'm going to hit all 3. I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback of the technology, the feels, the looks of these irons, and maybe the type of golfer these are really going to be aimed at. So I've recently done a review of the drivers from Tour Edge, which they were quite sort of impressive with the 10K and then the low spin version. They've also got 3 irons launching now, and we've got exotics in the max, so maximum forgiveness, pretty bulky looking head, tons of technology in there. Then moving it into then 2 really nice looking irons in my opinion from the back. We've got the exotics, the CB forged, so a little bit of a cavity back in there, and then we've got the muscle back, the MB forged. Okay, so we're going to start off with the max, then we'll hit some with the CB and then eventually the MB, and we'll look at some numbers between all these models. So first instincts with the max, as you can appreciate, max in the name, it's a pretty bulky looking golf club. We've got quite a thick sole there. We've got quite a nice attractive back, I think, here, because it's sort of like obviously some deep cavity in there, but then filled in with this sort of carbon sort of effect look. TE logo, new logo in from Tour Edge there, which I quite like. We've got the exotics logo in there, and I think then when you pop it into that playing position, again, as you're going to expect from this type of iron, it's a pretty large footprint. Heel to toe blade length is pretty long. We've got a thickish top edge there and a bit of offset, not a huge amount to be honest, but a bit of offset, but a satin finish. So it's shaped quite nicely. It's a nice rounded toe section. So this is a 7 iron. And the loft on this is going to come in at 27.5 degrees. It is strong loft. So maybe we're going to see some distance, we should see some ball speeds. We're going to have a look at spin. Sometimes that can be compromised a little bit with these stronger lofted irons. Ooh, just pull that on a tiny bit. I mean, I tell you what, that's a great sound off the club face there. That sounds pretty good. It's a little bit more muted than sometimes other irons in that sort of game improvement area. Sometimes a little bit loud, aren't they? But that's quite a nice sound to that. Pretty high ball flight for me there, you know, so there's no issues of getting that ball flighted. Tour Edge are very much saying this is sort of like a higher launching, fast sort of ball speeds for distance and control into the greens. So let's talk a little bit of tech inside the head and what's sort of going on with this max iron. So Tour Edge are saying they've got a very sort of low, ultra low centre of gravity and very much rear-ended. So basically that's going to pull that CG very low in the head and also more towards the back part of the head as well. That's going to increase that MOI number, and we all know about that MOI. We hear a lot about that in the 10K drivers as well, don't we? So ultimate forgiveness on miss hits, resistance to twists, keeping that accuracy and keeping that ball speed up. And then they've got this ViberCore TPU insert in the back, which is what I said, it looks a bit like a carbon effect there, which is just going to help dampen that sound. And I would agree with that, because those first few hits I've done with this iron, it felt quite nice, to be honest. It wasn't too loud. Yeah, it's a good solid sound to that off the face. It's a good feel to that off the club face. I mean, just looks like there's no spin on that though. Yeah, 4.354. You can sort of see in its flight, it's very sort of forward flying now. I mean, it's going to go, and the distance is obviously there. So if you're looking for ultimate, just gaining some yards, some distance, want that forgiveness, then this is probably a really good iron for you. Maybe just the sort of side effect of that in a way is then just that little bit of that control coming into the green. So you've just got to weigh up what you really want out of an iron in regards to sort of landing angles and control. So that's landed at 44 degrees. It's a little bit flat with not a lot of spin. So it's just question that control when it comes into land for me. So when we take a look at the club face, we've got pyramid face written just subtly on the toe section. So this is quite famous for sort of Tour Edge in a way, in terms of just behind this club face, variable face thicknesses, 3 different 3D thicknesses behind the club face. It's all about ball speed across the entire club face. And then the other very visual thing we see is when we flip it over and look at the sole. So we've got some help with turf interaction. You can see we've got some real aggressive sort of heel and toe relief on this sole plate here. So we can see this raised middle section, which is going to be the real good contact with the turf, but then relieved off the heel and also the toe, just to help it get through that turf a little bit quicker. Just a little bit pulled from me, but again, I really quite like the sound of that, to be honest, off the club face. Very confident, inspiring behind the golf ball. Fills you with a lot of confidence. I imagine those longer irons, again, confidence booster will be definitely given to you in that. And then availability wise, in these irons, available in right and left-handed, 4-iron through to pitching wedge, and wait for this, an AW approach wedge, a GW gap wedge, and an SW sand wedge. Obviously, that's the only problem you're going to see a little bit with these stronger lofts. You're going to have to chuck more wedges in there to create your gapping. Right, okay, let's move on now. So CB Forge, we're now into the players category. The golfers may be looking to shape the ball a little bit more, wants that little bit more feel off the club face, maybe a different spin number we're going to talk a little bit about, or definitely look a little bit about that as well. And maybe somebody who's just typically a little bit more concentrated on a central ball striking area. Great look at the back of the head, first instincts, that sort of satin, little bit of polished bit at the back, CB Forge there, and then obviously again into this playing position, and obviously the head now just becomes a lot more squat in comparison to the Max. Heel to toe length is a little bit shorter, less offset there. We've got a bit more of a polished heel and toe section with the satin groove area, and we've got a top edge that, to be honest, is quite blocky, I would say. It's not, I would expect that to be a little bit thinner maybe in this type of iron. It's very squared off, which for me just gives it that blocky look, but again, it's a nice sort of shape of the toe. Yeah, and that's a very different feel off the club face and a very different flight visually in comparison to that Max iron. Up in the air, that looks to be a bit more spin, a little bit. I'd expect a little bit more than that, to be honest. This is a 7-iron again, 32 degrees of loft, so it's a good 4.5 degrees more loft in the 7-iron in comparison to the Max, so very different loft number. And you can appreciate this is going to give us a different ball speed now. More loft basically is less ball speed. So this isn't maybe aimed at a golfer who's looking for ultimate distance. This is more now consistency is probably the big talking point when you come into these types of irons. But the feedback is, I mean, that feels beautiful off the club face. Great sound to that when you get into that forged iron. A little bit more muted again. Ball looks to be just sort of in the air a little bit. You can see there's just more control on the fly to the golf ball. It's not as flat on the peak of its flight there. So as we flip the head over, a visual thing we see in the back is this sort of black insert in the cavity of the iron. Now this is again a Viber core, it's a TPU sort of substance here, and if you feel it's like a little bit squishy, so like a rubber substance that is filled right behind your hitting area. This is again to help dampen sound, dampen vibration, and give you that feel through the club and that strike. And then we also see on the sole of the club much narrower, as you can kind of appreciate against the Max, but a little bit more chamfering on that leading edge. So again, just gets into that turf, but also gets it coming out and exiting for that turf interaction. Okay, bit off the toe, that wasn't perfect. You can get that feedback straight away through this iron. I can feel that little bit of a twisty feel to that. You're not going to get as much forgiveness, but I'll tell you what, you know, the carry distance there hasn't changed. You know, 173 carry wasn't the perfect strike. So availability wise in the CB Forge, we've got 3-iron through to pitching wedge and a gap wedge, no sand iron, and only right hand, so nothing for you lefties, unfortunately. These will also blend very seamlessly, is what Torage is saying, with the MB iron, which we're going to hit in a second. So could be very much an option of blending the set, maybe these in the longer irons, a little bit of forgiveness, and maybe moving into the MB and the scoring irons is also an option. So we'll hit one more with CB. That's a really nice one. Just to finish off there with the CB. Okay, let's move now over into the MB. So MB iron, muscle back, again, forged head, very, very similar look to the CB. So again, these would blend and wouldn't look out of place in the golf bag as a blended set, because they very much got the similar sort of look. Obviously, we just lose that cavity in the back, yet we still have the Viber core rubber insert in the back for help with that sort of sound. Now, this is what Torage is saying is the ultimate ball striker in this particular iron. Now, what I would say to that is, for me, who plays a blade iron, when I sit this down by the golf ball, if you didn't tell me this was a blade, I wouldn't have thought it would be. I would say this is more of the CB iron. if I'm being brutally honest. If I hadn't seen the CB and you passed me this, didn't look at the back of it, didn't tell me this was a muscle back, I would sit there down and say, right, that's more like a CB iron. There's going to be a cavity there. And the reason I say that is that top edge, again, is a little bit, it's thinner than the CB. It's better for me personally, visually. Again, it's just a little bit squared off. I'd like to see that a little bit more rounded. And it's not the smallest of heads, if I'm being brutally honest. You know, that doesn't look any dissimilar to the CB in terms of a blade length. So sometimes when you look at a blade, you think, oh, this is like a slither of metal. This is quite a confident, inspiring blade, I would say. Minimal offset. Again, really nice sort of shape behind the ball. A top edge that I prefer a little bit more. And again, a very, very similar sound, feel off the face to the CB. So again, these would blend perfectly as you transition from a CB to an MB. And to be honest, I'd expect to see this spin number a little bit higher maybe than what we're seeing here. I mean, there's some low numbers there. I mean, again, it's a 7 iron, it's 32 degrees of loft. Maybe expect to see a little bit more loft than this, but having said that, it's the same loft as a CB. So again, if you're splitting these, there's no issues with gapping when you're going from the CB to the MB. That's a gorgeous feel to it. Yeah, really nice flight. Again, the flight looks like there's a ton of control. I've got more than enough confidence that's going to stop. Even that spin number is a little bit on that lower side for me. We've got that height there at 96 feet. We've got a good land angle around that sort of high 40-degree mark coming in. So I've got more than enough confidence that's going to get some nice stopping power. Oh, it's beautiful. Of the line of the club, and it just really disguises the thickness of it. Again, availability wise in the MB, we've got a 3 iron through to pitch and a gap. Okay, so there's the batch hit with the MB iron. I think what I really quite like on that is you can see, all right, there's a couple left a little bit right. That's a bit more me, but that front to back with the MB just a little bit sort of tighter for me personally. I think it's a good range of irons, those. You know, obviously got the Max for the ultimate forgiveness, then into the CB, MB. As I say, the shape of the top edge, I would probably just like to see that a little bit more rounded if I'm being brutally honest, but the feel off the face, the sound off the face, for all of those irons are very good indeed. Post comments down below, let me know your thoughts. Tour Edge as a brand. Appreciate you watching the video as always, and hopefully we'll catch you all very soon.